Streets Talk with your host Reggie B. Come on, let's all join in. Free your voice, it's your choice, alright here. Oh, Simply Straight Talk.
Hey everybody, thank you for tuning in and checking us out, whether you're on YouTube, iTunes, Spotify, iHeartRadio, wherever you are listening to us, man, I really appreciate it. And today, we're just going to jump into this conversation. As you know, this week and last week, we gave you a bonus episode, but next week, we're going to kick off our official new show starting for season 7. So I hope you guys are loving it, and I really appreciate everybody sticking with us. So we definitely going to be bringing you some new content, some new material, and I'm really hoping, as always, that whatever we bring to you, it sparks some conversation that makes you think, makes you have a better outlook and perspective on life, but most of all, maybe help you build some bonds or maybe bring some healing to yourself. You know what I'm saying? Because everything we do, all of our topics, whether they be funny or serious, the ultimate goal is to present you with something that's going to make you think and have that dialogue to where there's some form of healing in your life, because it's all about motivation and getting up and getting out there and doing what you got to do. Now, today, just going to kind of talk about a few things today, probably about 3 general topics. But the first one I want to talk about, when it comes to relationships, now this is just something I've been noticing on the little break, man, because, as I've been talking to people, one of the things I noticed that a lot of people who are having relationship issues, I think that communication is probably one of the biggest things that I've noticed when it comes to relationships. Now, one thing I really, really wish people could kind of get a grasp on is the fact that, when people have put it like this, if you have an issue with somebody or you're not getting along with somebody, then I think one of the things you got to look at is your approach. Because I think sometimes people fail to realize that you may not like that a person has done something. You may not understand what this person has done. And you want answers about it. You want to know why they made that decision or did what they did or said what they said. But, the way you approach a person can make them shut down. It can make them not even want to have the conversation. And I think sometimes when we're in relationships, because so much feelings are involved and expectations of what we expect from our mate, that sometimes our approach may come from out of pocket, man. You might be out of pocket in the way that you're approaching that person. You know what I'm saying? You might not like the way he did something or said something, or you may feel like he said something, but you think it wasn't the truth. But the way you approach him, can make him shut down. And it's the same thing, guys, when you're talking to a woman and you don't understand something or you got some doubts about her or something she did or said, the way you approach a person can make a person say, you know what, forget this. I don't even want to have a conversation. I don't like the way you coming at me. And I think sometimes we don't take into consideration that when you approach somebody from an aggressive standpoint, from a negative standpoint, from an accusatory standpoint, because if you come and ask me something like, hey, you told me that we was going to do this dance class, and when I got there, you wasn't there. You know what I'm saying? So I felt like you wasted my time. Well, here's the thing. There's a difference in saying it like that or, basically like, hey, I went to the dance class. It didn't happen. Is everything okay? What's going on? Now, the thing about it is, it's all about how you present your questions. It doesn't mean that you are backing down. It doesn't mean that you have to be weak about it or believe anything or everything they say. But the thing about it is, you need to understand that if a person is going to answer you, they're only going to do it if you come at them the right way. So sometimes some people have this when I want to know something, I'm going to be all in your face about it. And I'm going to be straight up with you. I'm coming straight at you hard and in your face. And for some people, you might have some guys like that, some girls like that. But then again, you may have people like, listen, you're not coming at me like that. You come at me with courtesy. You come at me with kindness, and I'm going to answer your question. But when you come at a person with attitude, or you are accusing them, like basically saying that they did what you think they did, now you put them in a defensive mode. And I think people don't seem to realize that you can put a person in a defensive mode before the conversation even gets started. And we don't consider our facial expressions, because some of us can ask stuff, but, because I've seen people do this. It's like, so, put it like this. So you said that you're going to do this, and they'll tilt their head to the side, or they'll twitch their lips, or they'll raise one eye. It's something in their body that indicates it's like, oh, so I really don't believe you, and I'm asking this in a sarcastic way. And that's the thing that kind of happens sometimes. And those are the things that we really have to think about when we're actually dealing with people, especially when we're talking about relationships, and like how we communicate and the way we communicate, because many of us say things and do things, and we do it in a way that is just absolutely, bound to create conflict. That's going to make somebody feel like, okay, I don't want to talk to you. I don't like you right now. And people do that, because relationships, they have to be built on trust. They have to be built on honesty. And when you get to the point to where you feel like you can't communicate, or when the communication quickly turns into an argument, that's a problem. That's a serious problem. You got a lot of people who run into that situation. It's like as soon as a conversation starts, 30 seconds in, somebody's upset, and all of a sudden now they're getting ready to go to war. It's an argument. It's a fight. So you have to think about that when you're dealing with people. You have to think about that when you're trying to communicate, if you got a concern, if you got an issue. Now, you already know that you got some men out there who will lie just to lie. You got some women out there who are the same way. They'll lie just for the sake of lying. I mean, they lie just to lie. But what you have to do is try to think about the fact of, what is it that makes you feel like, I have to get defensive? Or if I do talk to a person, I got to come at them like I'm angry at the world. And you just can't do that. So sometimes you really do have to watch how you approach a person when you're trying to communicate something, when you're trying to get a conversation started. You got to remember that. It's key, because it can set the tone for the whole conversation. And some people just don't realize that your initial approach on somebody can set the tone for how a conversation is going to start. And if you can't get that right, then man, you in for a long or short conversation. Because one thing I do believe is this: anytime a conversation gets to the point to where people feel like they got to argue, or they got to start putting hands on each other, somebody just needs to walk away. You know what I'm saying? At some point, you just got to walk away, because if you can't, then that's an issue. Because you get to the point where you feel like you got to hit her, or she about to hit you, then that's a problem. That's a serious problem. And that's something that nobody should have to live. You know what I'm saying? Like, you should never feel like you can't go into your home and tell your mate how you feeling and not worried about an argument. You should never feel like, I don't want to go home, or I got to talk to people outside of my relationship because I can't talk to the person I'm with because it's going to start an argument. Nobody should have to live like that. But that takes both people being responsible and recognizing the fact that you got to work on your communication tactics. That brings me to something else. So, if you feel like every time you get into an argument or you have an issue in your home life, I wonder now, let me ask y'all this. How do you feel? Do you feel like you should be taking your personal issues outside of the relationship? Now, some people feel like, well, if I got friends or I feel like I can't talk to my mate, then yeah, I'm going to go talk to this person, or I'm going to go talk to that person. Now, some people feel like, what happens in the home. Now, I'm not talking about if somebody's beating on you or if somebody is, threatening you, stuff like that. I'm just talking about like you have an argument and all of a sudden they call in a friend. If, You know what I'm saying? You don't take out the trash, they calling their friend. You know, you come home 5 minutes late, you know, every little thing they're calling, telling their friends about it. And you're like, why are you telling all about business to somebody else? Now, me personally, I'm a private person. So if I'm in a relationship with somebody, I just don't believe that things that go on in our household should be taken out to everybody else. We should be addressing that. And another thing is, and guys know this very well. When you start taking your problems about your woman and you start telling it to other guys, you better be careful, because another guy will use that against you and swoop right in behind you, because they'll come and talk to her like, yeah, I don't know why he feel like that. They will say everything the opposite of what you're telling him to make it seem like they understand her, like they got her back. And the real truth is, they trying to get them draws, okay? They're trying to get the draws. That's all it is to it. So you got to be careful about that. And women, y'all know it's some women out there the same way. You run around, you tell your girlfriend stuff that's going on in your house about your man, and then some other woman like, oh, that's the biggest issue you got? Please, I'm about to swoop in on that, because I need somebody good. And if they know that that man is taking care of that woman and that woman is acting silly over something petty, another woman will swoop right in. Some women are just swoop in just to swoop in. You know, guys like that too. So you got to be careful about who you tell your business to. And you don't need to tell everybody everything that's going on. You creating problems. You creating drama. And the other thing is when you go out in public and you with that person, you don't think other people, the people you talking to, are not telling somebody else. So when they see you out with your mate, just know that they already talking about that. And you can feel when people in the room know something about you, or something's been said about you and people kind of whispering about it, and you can feel it. You can feel it. Now, to change the subject just a little bit, recently I've had a lot of questions about podcasting and starting a business. And I just want to say this. Listen, people ask me how difficult it is to start a podcast and how do you make your podcast successful. You know, I've taken a lot of flack from some other podcasters because I'm pretty honest. And I know a lot of people do YouTube videos and all this other stuff about, oh, you can grow your podcast to 1,000 followers in one day if you do this. Or, you know, you got a few of them out there that's really honest. But I'm going to tell you the truth, man. If you're starting a podcast, it does take some work because you have to work on your sound. You want to make sure it sounds good. It sounds clear. You want to make sure you got a good platform. Now, some people use Anchor, and everybody says they like Anchor because it's free. I myself use Libsyn, and I know I pay $20 a month for Libsyn, but I know what I'm getting. But the one thing I like about Libsyn is the fact that I own the rights to my material. Any commercials implemented in my stuff is because I put it there. Whereas with Anchor, you know, they sort of have control over your stuff. So you really got to read what you're doing, the policies and agreements when you sign up with some of these other companies about doing a podcast. The other thing you got to realize is a podcast is not an overnight success. I think a lot of people look at people like T.I., Joe Rogan, Seth Hogan. You know, a lot of these people who have these big, huge number of podcasts, you know, number one, they either started out from the beginning, so they attracted an audience, or these are people that are on a national platform before they did their podcast. And you got to remember something. When you talk about people like T.I., who was a rapper before he had a podcast. When you talk about people like Joe Rogan, who was a UFC fighter before he had a podcast. So when you got these people who was already on a national platform, they have the audience. And it's very difficult to get, you know, on that national platform when you're just an average person like you or me. So people who want a national platform, yes, they're going to get those 10 and 20 and 30,000 downloads. But you may find that when you're trying to start your podcast, you might have 2 listeners one day. You might have 10. You might have 15. You know, you're going to get excited when you get 100 downloads. But when you really understand the way the podcast world works, you know, 100 downloads is really nothing, you know, because you want to get to where you're getting those 10 and 20,000 downloads. Because that's when people really start to make money and they feel like you're starting to get noticed and people want to sponsor you. So the thing about it is doing a podcast does take work. With my podcast, if you listen to my first podcast that I did and you compare it to now, it is night and day. My entire format has changed. The way I do it has changed. Before, it was just pretty much me jumping on, hey, here I am. When you listen to my podcast now, it's a little more professional. Now, keep in mind, this is a bonus episode. So I don't have all the, oohs and ahs in this episode. This is just a bonus episode, so this is not going to be like my regular season episode. Like if you listen to this episode the next week, you're going to get the same thing, but you're not going to have all the bells and whistles that you get in a regular episode. So that's what I'm saying. So it takes some work, and you'll be surprised that a lot of podcasts don't last over a year. I mean, I'm surprised that like some people after about 6 months, they quit the podcast because they're not growing the audience. Some people run out of topics. They don't plan very well, so, and a lot of people just say, you know what? They're not going to do it. They don't want to spend the money because it does take money. It's not all free. If you want good editing, if you want good sound, I mean, you got to pay for all that. So you just got to be good about that. And you got to just keep in mind about that. And it's the same thing with starting a business. I tell people one of the worst things one of the things I hate to hear people say is a free business. There is no such thing as a free business. And I hate when people say that. I'd rather people say, listen, either you're going to start a low overhead business or a business with high overhead. A low overhead business means it doesn't take much for you to run the business monthly. Let's say you want to start a cleaning business. Okay. So basically you will start off small, get you a few cleaning supplies. You know what I'm saying? You may get some insurance, which promotes in any business, but that's a low overhead business. Whereas you say, I want to open a car lot. You know what I'm saying? You want you want to have your own car dealership. Well, now you're talking about a huge inventory. You're talking about insurance. You know what I'm saying? So that's a whole nother world. You're having to deal with legal stuff. So it's going to take a lot more. So the thing about it is you got to pay attention to what you're doing and really think in depth about any type of business. And I say the same thing that goes for podcasting. You really got to think about that and how you want to go about it. So, with that being said, man, those are two things that I really want to talk about, because I really feel like I hear a lot of people talking to each other, but they're talking at each other. They're not talking to each other when it comes to relationships and their approach, and the podcast things. I just really want to clear. I think it's a great thing. I love listening to other podcasters, but oftentimes you will find that they don't last because they just feel like they're not getting the attraction that they thought they was going to get. Now, the other thing that people ask me about, is like, what, do you think men are running away from marriage? I don't think men are running away from marriage. I think men today are more cautious. I think in the 60s and 70s, and even the 80s, I think the thing was to get married, to have that wonderful wife or a woman to have that wonderful husband and have this life to where it's a loving, caring relationship. But I think over the years, I think a lot of men have come to see marriage as a negative thing. They see marriage as, if we get a divorce, I'm going to get screwed. So I think that's why a lot of men are like really backing away from marriage. And, we also live in a time to where, there's this whole thing about feminine and masculine, and, you have more women acting masculine than you do feminine, and I think, women see feminine as a bad thing. And it's like, if you're a feminine, then it's like, it's bad. It's you're weak. And that's not what it is. You know what I'm saying? To be a woman and to be feminine, I think is great. It doesn't mean that you're weak. You know what I'm saying? But that's how it's taken. So now you have a lot of women, not all, but you have a lot of women who have the mentality of, me being feminine, nails, hair, and all this stuff, and just being a lady means that I'm weak. So now a lot of women feel like I have to outdrink a guy. I have to outcurse a guy. I have to talk dirtier than the guy. I have to be more sexual than the guy. And, there are still men out there who are kind of like, listen, I want a woman. I don't want a woman trying to be a man. And that's how a lot of guys see it. And a lot of guys basically just see it now as like, I'd rather date than get married, because if I get married, I get screwed if there's a divorce. I mean, it's just the way the laws are set up in this country. So, that's a tough one. I've done a couple shows about feminism and masculinity, and it's just a really tough topic, because when you say, feminine, like I say, a lot of women think of the word feminine and they think of weak, and that is not what feminine is. So, but that's a whole nother conversation. But anyway, listen, that's it for today. I just wanted to check in with everybody, let everybody know that we still here. We still doing our thing right here on the Simply Straight Talk Show. And just to let you know, we will be back next week with an official episode of the Simply Straight Talk Show. So y'all make sure y'all tune in. New shows will start again, dropping every Friday. So you guys check those shows out. Make sure you like, subscribe, and comment. And, check out the intro. You know what I'm saying? Because we got Melissa, who's dropping some great intros. And, Angelique has always been there with us. And she's still. So for those of you asking what happened the last two, yes, Angelique is still doing the intros. But trying to make it a little more interesting. So appreciate all the love. So everybody keep checking it out, man. Y'all stay tuned. And we'll be back next Friday with a new episode to kick off season 7 of the Simply Straight Talk Show. Peace, love.
You've reached the end of another episode of the Simply Straight Talk Show. Connect with us at Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook. Don't forget to sign up to our newsletter and check out the New Life, New Mind blog at newlifenewmind.com. See you at the next episode.